Okay, so this is the situation. Obviously, it's not walk in the park for newly arrived migrants, but when the issue is raised, there's a friend we can rely on, and it's called Job Watch. So we welcome here on the stage Gabriele Marchetti, who also speaks good Italian, I reckon.
Grazie a tutti. Ok, allora mi sentite? Do you hear me? Can you, everyone hear me? Great. So, I'm here to talk about, I just need to go backwards. How do we go back in these slides?
In time.
Go back to the first one.
Yeah.
Perfect. Like every good lawyer, of course, the second slide says, this is not legal advice. I'm very happy to hang around at the end and have a chat if anyone does actually need some legal advice about your situation. But I'm here, obviously, I've just got 10 minutes or so, there we go, 10 minutes to talk about, to give you just a very general overview of your work rights. So my name is Gabriele Marchetti and I'm a principal lawyer at Job Watch, which is a community legal centre, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Job Watch. Maybe, great. Go on.
More.
Thank you. So this is what we'll talk about now over the next 10 or 15 minutes, and please do ask questions as we're going through. I want this obviously to be relevant to you, so please just ask.
We can
or
try
if you
to
need
stick to 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and then we'll have a Q&A later on.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying, Dario. Perfetto. So, first, what does Job Watch do so that you all know that you do have somewhere to go to if you face any issues, or obviously if any of your friends or family face issues at work and you don't know who to ask for advice and information. We'll talk specifically about minimum rate of pay. How do you find out what the minimum rate is for your job? What kind of information should be in pay slips, and also some basic information about superannuation entitlements. Cash in hand jobs. I'm really big on this because so many temporary migrant workers, so whether you're a student on a student visa or on a working holiday visa, or even 457 workers, often not getting pay slips and then think, well, maybe I don't have any rights. If I'm just receiving cash payments, I've got no rights, so forget it, I can't complain, I've got nothing to back me up. That's not true, so I want to talk very quickly about that. Some safety issues at work, what can you do if, and just general safety issues to think about. And then finally, again, a reminder of how to contact Job Watch. Thank you. So here's a little bit of information about Job Watch. We are a community legal centre. Now that is, a community legal centre is basically an independent organisation. We are not part of government. We are funded by both Victorian government and the federal government, but we are completely independent, and that is really important to us because it means that we can constantly fight on behalf of workers to improve the laws for workers. So never feel afraid of coming to speak to us, because we don't report you, we don't tell government that you have contacted us, we don't tell your employer, we don't tell anyone. Anything, any conversations, any communication that we have with you will be completely confidential. As a first port of call, I would always encourage you to check out our website. It's not necessarily the best website in the world, but there are lots of fact sheets available on lots of different topics of employment rights. So that's a really good place to have a look at first. And then secondly, if you've still got questions, we have a telephone information line, and I've given you the phone number there on the slide, and I've got it again at the end of the presentation. That telephone information line is available for workers across Victoria, Tasmania and Queensland. I know it's a little bit funny, those three states, but that's because there are other organisations in other states. So Tasmania, Victoria and Queensland. You can call us, tell us what the issue is, what your situation is, and we will explain exactly all your rights across state and federal laws, what you can do, and we will explain the differences. Now, obviously, there are also unions, and Jessie's going to be talking after me. We are not here to take away the work of unions. We would always encourage people to become union members. That's a fantastic thing to do very soon after you arrive in Australia. But if you are not a union member, it's really important to know that you still do have somewhere that you can go to for help. All right, so some information about minimum pay. and pay slips and superannuation. Firstly, the law says that you must be paid for every hour that you work. The Fair Work Ombudsman, which is the regulator, the federal government regulator in this area, they probably will not investigate a claim if you go down Lygon Street, to use an example from Anthony's research, and you walk into a cafe. Mind you, I did this when I was about 19 at university. I walked down Lygon Street, went into every cafe until someone eventually thought that they would be kind enough to give me a trial. So the guy actually said to me, well, okay, can you be back here at 6 o'clock to do a trial? Show me that you can do the job of a waitress. And I said, yes, of course. So I agreed to go and do a free trial for a couple of hours to show him that I could actually do the main duties of being a waitress. If it is a very limited thing, like 1, 2, 3 hours maximum, and it is really just about showing the employer that you can do those duties, that is okay. The Fair Work Ombudsman will not investigate that because they will say, well, you were showing the employer that you could do that job. But anything beyond that, it is not okay for the employer to turn around and say, you were just learning, you were slow, that was just a trial. That is against the law. So if the employer says that, please speak up. So if there is only one thing that you remember at the end of this presentation, I really want you to know that we actually have good laws in Australia. Overall, yes, we can improve some things, but overall we have good laws. We require people to stand up and complain when things don't go right, when things are not fair. Because if individuals don't complain, then nothing will change. And in fact, the situation will get worse. So we do need you to stand up and complain. Sorry, just go back one step. So in terms of the national minimum pay, we have this thing which is sort of like your safety net. This is your safety. This is the absolute minimum pay. And you can see that I've given you the amounts depending on your age, because if you are under 21, there are lower rates of pay. But if you are 21 or over, you can see there is a minimum of $18.29 per hour if you are a permanent part-time or permanent full-time. And on the other hand, if you are a casual employee, the minimum is $22.86 per hour. Now, just because they are the national minimum rates does not mean that everybody should only just get those pay rates. Because, of course, depending on the job that you're doing, how senior you are, how much responsibility you have, and also the time of day, late at night, early in the morning, on weekends, on public holidays, there are most probably higher rates of pay. So the big message here is, please, it's really important to check your award. Obviously, if it's not about you directly, there are lots of people here, I'm sure, who are going to be giving information to friends and family. Really important to encourage people to check their award. There are awards that relate to so many different jobs. Awards, basically, for anyone who doesn't know, are big fat documents that set out all the minimum conditions at work for all the workers in a particular occupation or industry. So, for example, I've given you here the Restaurant Industry Award because, as Anthony has talked about with his research in terms of all the restaurants in Lygon, this is a huge area of work for JobWatch. We're constantly having to deal with the Restaurant Industry Award. So I've given you the rates at the end of this slide. You can see for a level 1 employee, and I've given you the duties that employee would be doing and what the rates are. So really important, when you look at an award, you have to check the classification to see what classification do you think you fall under, and then you go to the relevant rates. Now, in terms of then checking for your own jobs, very easy. You can either jump online, I've given you the details there for the Fair Work Ombudsman website, or you can give them a call, and they do have interpreters that are available for free, and they also have online information in many languages, including Italian. All right, in terms of pay slips, I've given you, and I won't read out, each of the bits of information that must be included in a payslip. And very important for you all to know, the law says you are entitled to receive a payslip within 1 working day of being paid. So if you get paid and your award says you must be paid every week, for example, then every week you must also get a payslip. If it's every 2 weeks, then every 2 weeks you must get a payslip within 1 working day of getting paid. And the law is very prescriptive about exactly what kind of information needs to be on there. Some employers can give you even more information, that's fine, that's all good. But if all these bits of information are not listed in your payslip, then your payslip is not compliant with the legislation. Next, superannuation. On top of your minimum wages, not out of your minimum wages, you are entitled to superannuation in the amount of 9.5%. I've heard so many times either international students or working holiday workers who are not getting superannuation at all, or are being told, oh yes, I'm paying you $15 an hour, but out of that I have to take some money out for your superannuation. That would be complete rubbish. The employer, if that's what is ever said to you, the employer is never taking money out for superannuation when they are already underpaying you. So, understand that on top of your minimum wage, there's an extra 9.5%. It is only an obligation on the employer if you are earning at least $450 a month, but that's not hard. So I'm sure most people would be earning $450 a month if you've got a job. It's obviously important that you open a superannuation account, give your employer all those details right at the outset. Okay, let's have a look at an example. So Vanessa has had a job in a cafe for the last 6 weeks. Initially, she was told that she would be paid $14 an hour. In fact, she wasn't paid at all for the first 2 weeks, and then when she asked her employer about this, she was told that she wouldn't be paid for that initial 2-week trial period. No, Vanessa, you were just too slow and we were just training you. Since then, she has been paid fortnightly in cash, but every pay packet has been slightly different even though her hours have been the same. And of course, she hasn't received any pay slips or super. Now, I hope you can all see that this situation is not okay, and I hope that you would all encourage Vanessa, if she's your friend, to complain. She can complain directly to the Fair Work Ombudsman. She can complain to her union. She can complain to a community legal centre like JobWatch. There are lots of organisations around, but it's really important that Vanessa stands up. What is she going to complain about? What are the specific things in here that she's going to complain about? The non-payment for that trial period, absolutely against the law. Even if Vanessa thinks, I was pretty slow, I did make quite a few mistakes, doesn't matter, Vanessa, you were working, you were an employee, you are entitled to be paid at least at the minimum rate, not a lesser rate. That's the number one. Secondly, the fact that she's getting the different amounts, even though her hours are the same. There might be a good explanation for that, because maybe some weeks she has worked on weekends or public holidays. That could make a difference to the rate, but obviously we would look at that. Not receiving pay slips and not getting superannuation. So there's 4 problems with that scenario, and I hope you all identified them. I should also just take this opportunity to tell you, as Anthony said, actually overall, you might think that I'm just constantly having to deal with all these cases and maybe have become quite pessimistic and overwhelmed by the exploitation that is going on. But in actual fact, my message to you is there is lots being done, just as Anthony has said. There is so much happening in this space, and there are really good, strong results coming out from the courts. So the Fair Work Ombudsman has had quite a few really wonderful results in recent times For example, maybe you've already heard, it was certainly on SBS, you covered it recently, the story of the young Italian cook up in Darlinghurst, up in New South Wales. She was on a 457 visa. I think she arrived in Australia first on a working holiday visa. Then she found a job as a cook with a cafe. She got them to agree to be her sponsor for a 457 visa. What they did was a little bit like what you've heard from all those 7-Eleven scandals. The director, the boss, basically said to her every week, you need to, as soon as we pay you, you need to pay back a certain amount of money to us because we can't afford to pay you this $50,000 a year that we've put into your contract. So they were forcing her to pay back some of her wages every week. That's completely against the law, unreasonable requirement to spend her wages. Plus they were underpaying her anyway because they weren't paying her the penalty rates for the weekend work and night work. The Fair Work Ombudsman investigated that matter and took it to court, and just recently the Federal Circuit Court penalised, so this is on top of ordering the compensation for the Italian cook, but actually penalised the director and the business together $97,000 as a penalty. So that's a really good, strong result, and it sends a strong message, I would say, to employers to respect the law, to do the right thing. Okay, just that last slide on cash in hand jobs is really, again, just to make everybody think about proof, evidence. You've got to gather evidence all the time. If you've got an employer, if you're in a situation where the wrong thing is happening, you're not being paid properly, or there's any other kind of mistreatment at work, and you're thinking, I might end up bringing a claim at some point. Well, set yourself up right from the start. Protect yourself by gathering all the evidence. So if you are in a cash-in-hand job, you still will have the protection of the law, but you need to think, how are you going to prove to any judge in any jurisdiction that you worked all the hours that you say you worked and what you were paid every week? If it was just cash payments, are you actually going to the bank and depositing that entire money every week so that there is a clear record on your bank statements? That would be good. If you just spend all your money, it's very difficult to prove what you were actually being paid. When I talk about evidence of all the hours that you've worked, you've got to think not just I worked 40 hours every week or whatever the total is, you actually have to have them listed, itemised. I worked this many hours during ordinary business hours, I worked this many hours on a Friday night, this many on a Saturday, etc. Really go into the detail. There is a very good free app that you can download now on the Fair Work, well, I don't know that you get it off the Fair Work Ombudsman's website, but it is created by the Fair Work Ombudsman. It's called Record My Hours. Free, it uses GPS technology, so you put in the details, the address of where you work, and every time you go there, it actually records it for you, all the time that you're spending at that address.
Gives you a coffee as well?
Not quite. Okay, a couple of quick examples of safety issues at work. So in the first example, this is an example of sexual harassment at work. Sexual harassment, absolutely against the law. We've got Janna. Janna works as a cleaner. Her boss constantly asks Janna out and has started sending sexually suggestive text messages to Janna. She's embarrassed, doesn't like going to work, but she needs the money. Now, unfortunately, JobWatch, we have acted for many, many clients who have experienced sexual harassment at work. This is not something new or something uncommon for us. Sexual harassment is against the law. It is defined, it's got 3 parts to the definition. It is conduct of a sexual nature that is unwelcome, and a reasonable person would know that that behaviour would be offensive or unacceptable to the other person. So if anybody does experience this kind of behaviour, the laws are very strong, they're very clear. again, encourage people to speak up. In the second example, a completely different kind of example, we have Alessandro. He works as a kitchen hand in a restaurant. One of the chefs screamed at him yesterday. He threw boiling soup in Alessandro's direction and then hit Alessandro across the face. Now, all these examples that I'm giving you are based, obviously I've changed names, but they're all based on true clients. I recently acted for an international student who was in this situation. He actually had his eardrum perforated because of a slap across the face by the chef. So this student actually took such a long time to come to JobWatch. He was in a cash-in-hand arrangement. He thought there was no way that he had any rights under the law. And thankfully, one of his teachers, he was obviously on a student visa studying, one of the teachers encouraged him to come to speak to us. And not only was the employer in a lot of trouble over all the safety issues, so that's a work cover issue, we've managed to get all his expenses, all the medical expenses paid for the time that he was out of work. Also, we uncovered, of course, a huge underpayment. So often there are more than one or two issues. There are often multiple issues that we can help with.